Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of the Connect series. I'm Nick Smith. We actually have Adrian here as a guest, which is new, so
Yeah,
I'm going to grill him with some questions. Actually, I think you've been a guest a couple other
a
times.
couple times, yeah.
And we're actually here today to demo the sysconfig tool as a part of the SimpleLink SDK. If you haven't tuned in, check out the episode with Henry, who kind of talks about and intros the sysconfig tool. But let's walk through it today. So, Adrian,
Yeah.
maybe before you get into it, just quickly, what is
Yeah,
sysconfig?
yeah, totally. Yeah, so as you mentioned, Henry did a great job walking through that, so definitely tune in and check it out. But in a very high level, sysconfig is a graphical tool to enable easy configuration of our software development kit, the SimpleLink SDK. Sysconfig is a graphical configuration tool. So we offer it in different flavors. The version that I'm using here today is integrated into Code Composer Studio, which is the development environment a lot of our developers are using when developing with a SimpleLink device.
Okay.
And a lot of the features that Henry touched on, I'll try to walk through here, but one of the main capabilities is the integration of those configuration views into one tool.
Okay.
So here within sysconfig, you'll see the ability to configure our various stacks that are integrated into the SDK. So if you're a Bluetooth developer, a Zigbee developer, Thread developer, we're exposing those configuration options in a very intuitive manner through the graphical interface.
Okay. So
Yeah,
yeah, and so that's I guess I've seen some Pinmux and some other tools before in the past.
totally.
So this is unique. You can actually configure both your stack or your connectivity option as well as then some of the Pinmux and some of the hardware config.
Yeah, so Pinmux is certainly a capability that we have available in the tool, and it's a very powerful one as well. But we go way beyond Pinmux. Okay. So we've got peripheral driver configuration. So TI drivers is our collection of peripheral functions, around ADCs, SPI, I2C, etc. And those are also configurable inside of sysconfig as well. But then, as you mentioned, we go even beyond that with the integration of the various connectivity stacks. So I'll kind of click through the user interface here a little bit just to kind of orient viewers so they have an idea of what the tool looks like and some of the features that are integrated into the tool. So the primary view here is here on the left side. This is kind of our long list of software components that are configurable by sysconfig. So we touched on a couple of them. You've got your stacks, you've got your TI drivers, and then as you configure your drivers, you can also set things like Pinmux. So here, by clicking onto the ADC driver, I can incrementally add that to my application code. And here in the Pinmux view, I can expand that and actually choose which I/O pin I want to use for that particular ADC instance. One thing I'll mention here is that this is a good representation of a feature Henry touched on, which is auto-solving. So what sysconfig can actually do is actually automatically assign an available pin based on your existing configuration. So you don't have to explicitly choose a pin. Sysconfig will kind of find the next available one. So as you're adding more and more capability, more and more features to your application code, sysconfig will do its best to auto-solve and auto-select available resources on your behalf. And then only once things start to get really constrained does it really require you to maybe make some decisions and maybe make some choices in terms of resource management.
Now, if I have some non-sysconfig peripherals or something else I'm doing with that pin, is there a way within that auto solver to say, leave this pin alone, don't?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, so while we want to provide an intuitive experience, we also want to provide a flexible one, right? So if a user wanted to specifically select a pin, they can choose this drop down here and explicitly make that selection. Okay. So now this particular resource is locked down to that particular software component. Furthermore, we have the ability to go down to this view where you can actually reserve peripherals. So if you wanted to bring your own code that was going to use a particular hardware resource, you can switch to this view and start to kind of lock them down and basically say, hey, sysconfig, don't worry about these resources. I'm going to handle them myself with my own custom code. And you can actually reserve it that way as well.
Cool.
Yeah, great question. A few other kind of high-level UI kind of introductions. Here on the right side is where most of your configuration will happen. So depending on what software component you select here on the left side, certain attributes, certain configuration options will be exposed here in this right pane. So in the case of an ADC instance, for example, we can change things like your reference source, whether it's fixed or associated to your VDD. You can also change things like Pinmux, like we did a second ago, so on and so forth. Also within this view is integrated documentation. So Henry touched on this concept of guided development, and that's driving a lot of what we do from a UI perspective. So you'll see things like hoverovers. You can click on question marks to expand and be introduced to relevant documentation. You can click on any one of these links, and it'll open up the right section of the right document within your web browser. So by providing all of that in one view, we're hoping developers can accelerate their time to market and not have to kind of peruse the web to find the right collateral for their needs.
Yeah, it makes sense. And how does this then start to interact with the hardware the user has, whether it's one of our launch pads or maybe their own board?
Yeah, great question. So there's a few other views that help facilitate that. Here on the right corner is this sort of board view. And this is where you'll start to see basically what looks like the Launchpad connector. So you can actually see which pins are being used or leveraged with your given configuration. So as you add more and more features here on the left pane, more and more of these pins will start to be consumed by your software. And this gives you a good sort of bird's eye view of what's being used, what's available, still at your disposal, so on and so forth. If you wanted to migrate away from a Launchpad, we also have a pin view. And this gives you more of a device-centric view, so you have an idea of what pins are still available, and you can route that to whatever hardware resource you want in your own custom hardware design.
Okay. Right, so even if I'm not, maybe I've moved past prototyping on a Launchpad, I have my own board, this tool is flexible enough to work. Okay.
Yeah, so while SysConfig is going to certainly help you in your initial stages of development, there's no reason why you couldn't come back here and tweak and make those modifications, starting with a Launchpad, but ultimately migrating to your own custom hardware.
Okay, yeah, so that's good. That kind of answers within the development cycle. This isn't just a tool for early prototyping. This thing really helps take you through to production.
Definitely, and there's a few other features that I can touch on that maybe explain that a little further. One of which is this code preview view. So this is a pretty complex example. So this is a Bluetooth simple peripheral example. So if you're trying to create, a phone accessory that talks over Bluetooth, this might be a good example to start with. And you'll see that SysConfig is actually generating all of this code that you otherwise would have had to hand manipulate before the existence of this tool.
Right.
So our SDK is very powerful, very capable, lots of configuration options, and that was always available in previous versions of the SDK. We're only now exposing it through a more intuitive UI, where you're actually able to generate that code now. And to take a look at what that generated code looks like, we provide a code preview. So you have the ability of launching this and actually diffing your code as you make UI changes. So we'll pick a more simple peripheral just to kind of keep it simple here. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the TI driver config.c file. And this is where you'll find things like your ADC configuration, your GPIO configuration, so on and so forth. So you can see here that as I add more and more ADC instances, that code preview is modifying and updating in real time.
Wow.
So this gives you sort of a level of transparency to kind of see what's going on behind the UI, so you're not kind of lost in sort of just trusting the tool.
Sure.
You see 100% what's happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, very cool. And now, so maybe once I've gotten this far, how do I take this and bring it into my application or what I'm working on?
Great question. So the code preview kind of gives you, again, that glimpse of what ultimately SysConfig will generate. Once you're comfortable with your changes and you're ready to go, it's just like any other application you've worked on within the SimpleLink SDK. You can go ahead and build your project or hit the debug button, and that will compile your code and also run the SysConfig tooling behind the scenes to then generate that code. So that code then gets injected back into your application layer here. And now it's part of your application code, and you can go ahead and compile it, flash it to your hardware, and you're ready to go.
Wow. Yeah, very cool. It seems very powerful. Are there any other kind of key features of this you want to walk through?
I think we hit most of it. Maybe one other feature is this history pane. Again, we want to really make this as intuitive as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and close out some of these views. And this history pane kind of walks through all of the modifications and edits you've made within the GUI.
Oh, that's nice.
So you can go back all the way to your initial state, or you can roll back to maybe 1 or 2 edits ago. And that way you don't get lost, as you're clicking through the user interface and adding and removing different components. You can actually see every change and every modification and roll back to any version of that file, depending on your needs.
Wow. Okay, so I guess final question, what forms is this available in? How do I get started today? Where can I start playing with it?
Yeah, definitely. So SysConfig is integrated into our SDKs. So, by downloading the latest quarterly SDK of the SimpleLink platform, you're going to get a lot of the sort of logic and metadata that SysConfig requires. SysConfig also is delivered in a few different flavors. It's integrated into Code Composer Studio, like we see here. We also have a standalone version of the tool, which can be downloaded and installed to Windows, Mac, or Linux. And that gives developers flexibility if they want to use SysConfig with their IDE of choice, like IAR, for example.
Gotcha.
Then the third version is hosted in the cloud. So if developers want to use Code Composer Studio in the cloud within their web browser, they can leverage SysConfig there as well. So you kind of have 3 options depending on your use case. Today we're using it inside of Code Composer Studio.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on as a guest
Yeah,
and
totally.
demoing this. It's cool. I like it. I like having you on as a guest so I can kind of
Thanks.
pepper you with questions
Love
there.
it. Love it.
So everyone, thank you for joining this episode as well. As I said, make sure to check out Henry's episode overviewing SysConfig if you haven't seen it. Check that one out and then watch this demo. This is a very powerful, very unique tool that's out there for you to use today. As always, if you have feedback for us, tweet at Sensor2Cloud. Let us know if there's topics you want us to cover. And don't forget to tune in next week. We always have a great new SimpleLink topic for you. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thanks.